Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Did we or did we not just love that performance? My name is Sean Finney. I have been in this theater more times than I can count, but I'm excited to make a new memory, probably my favorite memory today, with someone who I respect so much as an artist, we just saw, but also as a person who's beautifully human, somebody who represents everything that you think they are and more consistently all the time, somebody who loves filmmakers, loves his crew, and loves his art. It is my pleasure to introduce Oscar-nominated Colman Domingo. I mean,
wow, thank you.
You know, I first saw this film in this theater, and I'm gonna tell them something that we privately spoke about, Colman. Don't worry, not that thing, a new thing. When I saw this performance, and then I ran into Colman later, I was like, I couldn't even get anything. I couldn't say hello. I was just like, Colman, it is your time. It is your time. Because what I witnessed, and by applause, what I'm clearly seeing, they all witnessed, is just someone illuminating, somebody giving so much of themselves. So thank you for that, Colman. Thank you so much. And I want to use that word time maybe to start this conversation, because I think, you know, we have two people, right? We have the individual who's like, about damn time that we're seeing this recognition, and we have some people that's like, wow, he's done this in such a short amount of time. And we're in Hollywood, you all. We all know that nothing happens that fast, and nothing happens without a lot of love and highs, but also perceived lows, because I believe they're really preparation. And I would love for you, Colman, to just talk about how your cumulative time over the 30-year, he's only 10, y'all, over the 30-year career that has supported you into portraying this masterful art that you just did.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. Just thank you. I'm filled with such gratitude even just to be here, because I know that it's been such a windy road to this film. I've been working, you know, I started my career when I was 21 years old, and I moved to San Francisco from Philadelphia, and I just wanted to be a theater artist, and I wanted to, I don't know, I would be frustrated sometimes with the things that I was auditioning for, so I became a writer, and I wanted to write the work, and then I directed the work, and then started theater companies. And I just wanted to be, I was on the road to being a journeyman. At times I was on the road to be an artistic director of a theater. That's where I played, that's where I felt very useful. I felt like I can change people in the theater in dark spaces, you know, and then I wanted to think about the kind of men that I wanted to portray and the way I wanted people to see them in the world. You know, these men that look like me, and I'm able to show all these different shades of humanity through what I believe is what one of my teachers told me when I was 19. He said, I think this is your gift. And I ran with it, because I'd never been told that I had a gift. And I thought, well, this feels, I guess, purposeful. And so my course has always been from just wanting to serve the work and create the work and let it be there. And that's why I've always been a multi-hyphenate. I was like, okay, I'm just going to get in where I fit in. What do you need? What does this production need? You need an actor, director, writer, producer, I'll do it. Stagehand, you name it. So I think that that's honestly because I've been doing all of that work for so long. And my career went from San Francisco to New York and London for a while, And then eventually, you have highs and lows, and I tell anyone who's ever watching all this light on me right now, just go back 10 years, go back 15, go back 20. It wasn't always that bright. It was starvation times. There was rebuilding, rethinking, leaving. There was all these side hustles, and there was never any promise to sit here. But I was on the journey of being an artist. And so I think that's the commitment that I made, that my success was always based on what I believed my success was. It wasn't based on what, the world says being success is.
The light was always on you, Colman, because it was in you. That's the difference. When it's on you, that can turn off, but when it's in you,
Sean,
that's
you're
never
gonna make me
turn off.
today. So.
That's what I came here to do. That's what I came here to do.
I'm a very sensitive person, so that's.
And it's a superpower that we get a chance to see. And you mentioned journeyman, and you also had your master's in journalism. I'm really curious as to how you, as an archivist, as an artist, as an activist, research for a role like this, because I didn't see him mimicking Bayard Rustin. I saw you take the soul of what I believe his character was and shared him with us. And so I would love to just understand your process as it relates to research, to really ground yourself in the work.
Thank you. Well, the first thing, the moment that I knew that I was going to do this, I had a choice to either be completely terrified or go to work. And I went to work. I had 5 months ahead of me, so I went to deep preparation. That's what, I think maybe that's the journalistic heart of mine. I'm just very curious about everything, so I want to know everything. And not just what's on the page, everything around it. So I want to learn everything from the time frame of, where is he in 1942? Where is he in 1963? What are they eating? What's on the radio? You know what I mean? Making all decisions about everything, about I look at imagery, I look at, any of his writing, anything that I can find. Of writing, I would go to the Schomburg, I would, go to civil rights museums, so I would interrogate everything around it, because I feel like that's a part of my work, to find out all this stuff that you may not know it, but you will feel it in some way, that I know it, that I know what makes sense of how he sits, how his clothes are fitting, how he uses his hands, his body language. I feel like he moves different than I do, and he moves differently in different spaces. So that's from imagery, that's also from listening to any interview or debate that he had, and finding out the way he spoke, which was with this mid-Atlantic standard accent that was of his own creation. He was kind of a dope person for that, right? He's like, I'm such an outlier. I'm even going to give myself my own accent. In 1963, where people really don't want his presence in rooms, but he's like, you're going to have all of me and an accent. Exactly. So, right? He was so fantastic in that way because he was very undaunted. He was really in his own making. And say everything, all his ideas and his curiosity, the way he loved, traveling and all the different teachings, whether it's of Gandhi or the Bible, you name it. But he was a sponge and took in everything. So I wanted to take in all of that as well. I took in everything that he took in, so I can create a bit of it, more of his spirit. And I think that the thing that I love that you said, that was the most important thing to me. It was like, if I actually, I think, played Bayard Rustin the way Bayard actually was, it would seem like a caricature, I think. Because he, had this very thin, high, reedy voice. He played the lute and sang Elizabethan love songs. He had a tenor voice. He was an incredible personality, but his voice was like pitched even a bit high up here. And he spoke with very, great elocution at times. And it was like, that's a lot for people. So George C. Wolfe, my brilliant director, and I, we found a middle ground where we found it sustainable and honest and organic and still connected to me. Not something I'm reaching for that's outside of myself, but finding that Bayard that lives in me. So that was all the work that it took, and it took about good 5 months of that. And I always take myself through a rigorous rehearsal period because that's just what I need, so I can feel free. I needed to learn all my speeches. I'm pretty much in every page of this script, so I needed to know a lot. Because also, the thing that I knew I needed to do was have the spirit and the energy to lead the set as well. It's not as, I don't think it's I've seen some, how I can say, on a film like this, I think you need all of these elements of the character and the story and all your research and all that, but you can't be insular about it, because you still have to guide and guide everyone, every single department, so I had to guide it in a way that I believe Bayard would. You know, how do you rally everyone and make sure that every single person that comes in, every background actor, every bit of transpo, every grip, to know that this is the film. This is why you're doing it. This isn't just a gig, you know? So I think that there was levels of all of that, and so that continued through production of How to Lead as well.
Colman can interview his damn self. But what I love is that you mentioned about that. But no, he really good. But because you're going into what I wanted to talk about, which was, I know your time in theater, because you are a journeyman and have done so much. You were always equity deputy?
Yeah.
Explain to those who don't know what equity deputy is.
Okay, who knows what an equity deputy is? All right, who's been an equity deputy? Who loves to be an equity deputy? Nobody usually. Okay, except me and you. Okay, get this. In the theater, my friends, there's always the first day of rehearsal when you're in actor's equity. You have to choose an equity deputy. And you don't get a badge or anything. You just basically, you get burdened with the responsibility of taking care of the well-being of not only the company, bringing any issues up that you think it may be violating any union issues, and you bring them to your producers. You're sort of the middleman in that way. So usually, and I have a long career in the theater, and every first day of rehearsal, you can vote, you can say, oh, I'd like to be it, or someone nominates. And someone always says, I nominate Colman Domingo. And at first I was like, oh, okay. And somebody seconds it, and then you're like, okay, I guess I'm deputy. And then I didn't know why it was always my job. But it seemed to start to make sense. Now, maybe 10, 15 years later, when they're like, hey, who's gonna be it? I said, I got this. So I didn't even know, but then I started to understand that I actually had a skill. It was a great skill of mine, of diplomacy. And really being able to hear all sides and say, okay, and advocate for each other. I always advocate, I understand my producers are my partners. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, I know how to advocate for all the actors and anyone else who needs something. And because I believe, in my core, that we all want the same thing. We just have to find a way to hear each other. So I knew that thank you. So I knew I needed that. So I'll tell you this, I don't know if I would have been ready for this role maybe 10, 15 years ago. I needed those 30 plus years to do this work, because it was going to require not only my skills as an actor, but my leadership skills. And the skills that I think that I needed to have. By the way, the craziest thing is this. I found out Bayard Rustin was 51 years old when he organized the March on Washington. And I found out when I met with Gayle King on CBS this morning. She said, how old were you? And that's the one thing, as much as research as I've done, I didn't remember. I was like, boy, I didn't think about that. And I was 51 years old when I did this film. So, in some cosmic way, yes, I needed all those years to be at that age to do that work. The same as Bayard, yeah.
And Colman, talk to me about, because I think collaboration. And I think about the decisions, Bayard Rustin wanting to wear blue, right, and what that represented. And talk to me about your collaboration with some of the other department heads, with makeup and hair, to really fully immerse in that world, production, design. I'm really, really curious how you all work in that tandem, in that space.
The most beautiful thing about this collaboration is that I was really privy to so much more than usual. And I think that was very useful. I would, with Mark Rucker, our fantastic production designer, he would make sure that he would show me and ask me questions about the vinyl albums that are sitting by the record player. And because he knew that I needed to know exactly what they were, and I had to have a connection to them. So there's Mahalia there, there's James Brown, there's all these different things that are there, which is great, that we know, but it helps me in performance as well. So even like the way Bayard's apartment looked, they made sure the detail of that was just like Bayard's apartment in Chelsea. And so all of that, so and they would allow, I would go in, the moment the set was being dressed and everything, and I would play and lay in the bed and move around and make sure that it was as organic as possible, because I know that was helpful for George as well. So he would say, okay, so George speaks very fast. So where would you sit? You know, and I'm like, and I would have an idea. I think I was sitting in my chair here in the scene here, because this chair is from India, and you know, we could make decisions that, you know, that give it all the texture. And then the thing that was really great was the costume and hair discussions, because we had levels to it of how much, because Bayard's hair at times was very, like, in his later years, was shocking white, and it was always sometimes it was a little messed up. He wasn't the brother that was polished like, you know, Martin Luther King or, you know, Ralph Abernathy. He wasn't these Southern Christian brothers. He was a bit of a hippie at times. So there are times where it's just a little, you know, you tell like, oh, you didn't get a real good haircut. So I think actually, to be honest, I would actually, like, sometimes when it's kind of perfect, I would like sort of mess it up a little bit. You know, that was my own little secret. I'm like, I don't think it's that perfect in the scene. He should look a little frayed when he takes the glasses off. You know what I mean? So for me, that was all like, for me, like all this stuff. And we really talked about every ounce of that. And then I wore prosthetics. I do have my own teeth, you guys. I had to wear prosthetics for my upper teeth here, because he lost 2 or 3, and then we had a version of it that had green screen, but then when we started in rehearsal, but then we're like, we just thought it was a little distracting for my fellow actor, so we went with a black mat here, and then the rest is really done like a little CGI to make sure you can see to my tongue in post. So that's, if you're wondering how that happened, that's how it happened. But I would put those bad boys in like an hour and a half before, because I had to work with them, because as you see, I speak with alacrity, and it's just, it's a lot of words to chew, so I had to get my mouth prepared for that, because I had an impediment. And also, it also gave him a very slight lisp, which I actually have a very, very slight lisp, but he also had a slight lisp. So that was awesome. So now so I'm like, oh yeah, that naturally will happen. So we made decisions on all of that. And then also with the costume department, I loved working with Tony Leslie James, because we really discovered a few things together, especially like how he feels in certain spaces. Like how Bayard is, I think when he's in spaces, when he's his freest self in himself, I think his suits are cut a little differently. So his arms can open wide and a bit freer. Or when he's standing in a room with the NAACP in that black suit in the very beginning, after he hands that letter to Martin, his suit is a little bit more tight, and he's trying to, and even the structure of the suit is actually not him. He's trying to conform. He's trying to be like everybody else. Otherwise, you see him in a very light suit, or gray, or his tie undone. That's the Bayard that we were like, in all his images, he was the guy who had his tie undone and his sleeves rolled up. And for me, that says a lot about him, especially at that time. He was such an outlier, and he was not able to he was like not concerned about that, about image. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that's why he was being his full self at all times, which was also a challenge to most people. Because, you know, put your tie up, you know, fix, you know, this is the way we need to look as a collective, as we're trying to march towards freedom. And he's like, I march towards freedom with my intelligence, my wit, and my humor, and my heart, I think. He was kind of dope.
And you know, Colman, I hear that and I think about like the decisions that are made, but also the responsibility that one might feel to, you know, bring someone whose work we are all intimately familiar with, the March on Washington, but not intimately familiar with the details and the complexities of how it come together. And because he was his full self, some could say maybe that's why he wasn't a part of or erased from history, you know, really being in the forefront. I didn't learn about him the way that we know about Martin Luther King, the way that we know about other individuals. What responsibility did you feel as you were bringing his full story to light and to love, as a creative, as an artist, but as an archivist and as someone who's a journalist himself? Like, what responsibility did you feel to bring this character to us? So beautifully, by the way.
Thank you. I felt the responsibility to, he was someone I found out about when I was about 19 years old in school. And I thought that, you know, as a kid trying to navigate his own way through the world and how to be in the world, I stumbled upon Bayard Rustin in an African-American student union that I joined at Temple University. And we were talking about the March on Washington, and his name came up, and I was like, oh, that's curious, never heard about him. I learned about the March on Washington and Dr. King and all these other leaders, but I'm like, well, why haven't I heard about Bayard Rustin? And then I was like, oh, he's openly gay. Okay. And then then I had to start to almost, you know, rewrite the history. I had to, interrogate more and find out more. And like, how is it possible that he's so profound and prolific? Anyway, so because I had that as sort of a North Star for a long time, just imagine, throughout my career, there's been at least maybe 4 or 5 occasions when the people who know about BioRustin feel like a secret society. And every so often somebody's like, hey, you know what, whenever they're doing a biopic about BioRustin, it's gotta be you. I'm like, oh, thank you, okay, thank you. And then years later, somebody else will say, they've gotta do one, and you've gotta do it, you've gotta write it, you've gotta do it. So people have been telling me this for many years. Wow. And I didn't know I kinda knew, I was like, I can see that, I think I can see why. And then by the time I was offered this, I knew that I had everything in me to access it. I don't think this way about every role or anything, but I knew that I was the one, and I knew that I was ready for this responsibility, and I wouldn't take it lightly. It's very meaningful, especially for these rare depictions of people in our community to be seen fully. Not just his intelligence, but we bring his sex into it. Mm-hmm. We bring in his joy, his laughter, his humanity. We even bring in his messiness with relationships. So we build a real full human being to make sure that he's so full. And I knew that was the task, and that was the opportunity. And so I thought, and I truly thought this. I thought, if this is the last film that I ever do, I want to give everything I could to it.